Okay, now it's time we look at percentage of amounts with a calculator. In part 2 and 3, we learnt to calculate percentage of amounts by hand. We learnt the key ones, 50, 25, 10 and 20. And then we talked through the steps of how you find more complicated percentages. And we looked at how you show the working. Now, we're going to look at calculator methods. So we're going to find 23% of 60. And we're going to do this on the calculator by rewriting this sum as something that we can type in to our calculator. So, how can I type in 23% of 60? Right. So, 23% of 60. Well, we've seen of before. If you remember that we dealt with of when we were looking at fractions, and we dealt with of in that situation where we learnt that something like this. We learnt that 6 lots of 4 meant 6 times 4. So we can take of to mean multiply. Now we can keep 60 as 60 because that'll type in lovely. What about 23%? How shall we change that in order to put it into our calculator? Well, what is 23%? So, 23% is 23 over 100. If I press S to D, 23% is 0.23. So now we've converted our calculation into something we can just type in. So 0.23 times 60 is 23% of 60. Now, the calculator puts up 69 over 5, but I press my S to D button and I get 13.8. So, there is a method for finding with a calculator a percentage of amount. Of becomes times, the percentage becomes a decimal. So, what we have to now practice is simply how to convert those percentages into decimals. Let's do a few of those now. So, 35% of 50. What will that be on the calculator? That will be 0.35 times 50. 57% of 11.2. Will be 0.57 times 11.2. At this stage, don't worry about typing them in, just worry about making sure you're confident on the conversion. Let's try another one. 60% of 38. Look at how you wrote 57%. How are you going to write 60? It should be 0.60 times 38. Let's do another one that will help us with this. Let's do 8% of 38.5. Look at how you wrote the 7% in 57. So it's 0.08. This would be a good time to pause the video and write these down. So, let's try another one. 12.2% of 36. Now, first off, where would 12% go? Well, 12% would go here and here, like 0.12. That's what you're thinking. And then you're thinking, what about the 2? Does that change it to 1.22? Or does it go after the end? Which of those two is it? Well, 1 is 100%. So this number here is a huge number. The 12 shouldn't change place when we put the 0.2 after it. So it's 0.122. Some of you will notice that the decimal point has effectively jumped 2 places. In each case. And that's another good way of doing it. Okay, next percentage. 135% of 57. Now, you'd be comfortable with 35%. You'd say 35% was 0.35, as we did up here. So what's 135%? Well, it's 1.35. It's the tens and the units in your percentages that you've been putting after the decimal point. Or, if you prefer to think of it this way, it was 135 and you jumped the decimal point 2 places. The other thing to look out for is 100 at the start there. 100% is worth 1. So we know this number is bigger than 1. So it's 1.35 multiplied by 57. Let's try a couple more to check that we've got this. of 20 because we're not really practicing that just yet. How are we going to do these? So, I'm going to look at the decimal point moving 2 jumps. That's 2.76. I'm going to look at the decimal point jumping 2 jumps. That's 12.54. I'm going to look at the decimal point doing 2 jumps. Right. I'm going to have to put an extra 0 in here because I can't see them. 0.007. So 2 jumps to the left, turn it into a multiply. That's how we're going to use a calculator to find percentages of amounts. And as we found earlier, and I'll show you again, if we get a fraction like so, what we do is we press the S to D button here, and it converts it into a decimal. Now you need to practice this in lots of different situations, and then we're going to look at how you can use that to perform percentage increases and percentage decreases.